Welcome to the Board of Trustees of the Stevens Memorial Library Annual Meeting. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the North Andover Board of Library Trustees will be conducted via remote participation for members of the public. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning into Comcast or Verizon channel or online at www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of North Andover website an audio, video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So we will call to order at 5:05, and we do a roll call. And I am Ann Kavanaugh here. Mary DeShaw.
Oh. Here.
Okay. Bill Duffy is not here. Eva Homery.
Here.
Stan Limpert. Nope. Okay. Mark Rogers. No. Earl Svensson.
Here.
Okay. Kathleen Keenan.
Here.
Cindy Mazza.
Here.
And Dee Casey.
Here.
Okay.
Anne, may I just offer a correction? When you were reading the information about the virtual
Yes.
meeting, you mentioned that it was our annual meeting.
Oh, I did.
So it's just our monthly meeting.
Oh, I meant monthly.
Just for the edification of the people
Right.
who might
Okay.
be watching.
It's
Yeah.
It's our monthly meeting, not annual meeting.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And do we have any public comment, Cindy?
No, we do not. I
Okay.
just checked and we do not.
Okay. So correspondence. There were some staff notes, and thank you for the April 14th box lunch and recognition. And I received an email back from Tram Nagayan about the state aid, which I sent to everybody, so you can check that out. And then just be aware that I'm sure you've seen there's several emails coming from Maura Didi at the state level. That one is the trustee orientation schedule for the spring. Those are always informative, even if you've been a trustee for a while. You always learn something new. And then there was a strategic planning deep dive that some of us did. I think they repeated it, so we didn't repeat it again. I think it was the same thing. And then there was an email about some of the stimulus funding for libraries, which Kathleen just resent the link because I couldn't find it. And then there's also, it was today, United for Libraries Learning Live about Ask the Experts. People could ask different questions about boards and friends and foundations. So hopefully they will have a recording of that, that we can watch later. So some of the reports. So we have our new process with our monthly action item list. And we, for the most part, that will be assigned to new business or old business. So that comes later in the report. And then also the motions log, which it just helps to remind us where we were at. And then Stan and Kathleen and myself attended the legislative day on April 8th. And that was virtual. And it was just talked about state aid and the importance of it and contacting your state reps about the importance of that. So that was interesting. I think it's a lot longer when you go in person. Isn't it an all-day event? I think so. Okay, and that's all I have for my report right now. So I'm going to hand it over to Kathleen.
Thank you. Yeah, legislative day in the past actually happened in the Boston State House. And after the sort of orientation and welcome talks, you had an opportunity to go around to the offices and meet your actual state senators and representatives. And I think that Earl and Stan, for instance, get kudos because they've in the past gone into Boston for the day and met people. So maybe next year we'll get to do it that way again. So my first set of updates are about the building. There are two things that require us to take an action. Those are under new business. The good things that are already done is that we've installed the new utility shed, which is really a perfect choice for us and is making Rick very happy. It's going to make a lot of the maintenance work in the building much easier, particularly the landscaping. We have an update from Waterfield Design, who's doing the design or the architect plan for the historic entrance, and they are supposed to have a preliminary design to Steve and us in about 2 weeks' time. The goal is for them to let us give them a little bit of feedback, and then they will finish it, so we will be able to get that design out for construction bid. At this stage, we don't know when the construction could happen. It might be later this fall based on just sort of the timing of things so far. And of course, if companies bid to do the work. We have been doing some preliminary work here as well. One of the things we had to check was the drainage because there are catch basins at the historic entrance. We've been doing video scopes of the drainage and there are a couple of issues there, but it's all been fed over to the Public Works Department for the engineers to take a look at it to see what else we need to do. But it's basically good news for what they're seeing so far. We did the first part of the roof repair. The second part that couldn't be done is below in the new business. We had Suprema, who is the manufacturer for the EPDM for the flat roof that we did a few years ago. They do an annual inspection to re-warranty us, and they did find a small roof wrinkle near a drain, and we will be getting that repaired, but it should not be a big issue. We've also received back the internal air quality report, which is basically good news for the library. There are a couple of recommendations of things we might try to do, and I'm working with Steve Foster and also with Rick Picardi, the custodian, to see if there are a couple of cleaning routines, for instance, that we might want to change. But overall, it is good news. And the other thing that's happening is that we've made a lot of progress in the children's room. We were redoing the organization of children's picture books, which is nearly complete. And the next stage for that will actually be by new shelving. So I'm hoping for the next meeting to know what that shelving looks like and have a cost estimate for us. That's for the building. For staffing, we had the open position of the library department assistant. We had several candidates. Cindy and I have interviewed some people, and this week we're hoping to move forward on that and fill that position fairly soon. The next section, of course, is about services. And as with everything, a day can really make a big difference. So today, President Biden had an announcement with changes, and then following that, Governor Baker had them. So Dee, Casey, and Cindy and I were planning to meet tomorrow anyway to talk about sort of what's the next step in terms of reopening. So it's actually perfect timing to have their statements because that gives us some some guidance about the dates that they're, and I keep telling people these are still forecasted dates. When you talk about August 1st, there could be a lot of things that change between them. So our next step is to talk about what are we going to do in the month of May, and how does that lead us to get to the month of August. The one other thing to just report on is, as we've been working in the building to make space for staff during COVID, we've also opened boxes and closets and, found things that needed attention or needed not to live here anymore. So one of the things we found that really needed attention is that we had a large collection of old newspapers from the North Andover Citizen. We would never be in the position to physically preserve those newspapers in a way that they should be done. So we've worked with the Historical Society here in town, and we have donated the papers, the physical papers, to the Historical Society, where they will be preserved, and we will be working with them to create digital finding aids so people will be able to use them online. So that was a really nice thing to happen. And that's me for an update.
Kathleen, I saw the papers in the new, in the Historical Society's renovated building, sitting there in the corner, and they pointed them out to me. So, yeah. So I think they're happy about it. And the nice thing is they're in a good location with good air quality. So,
Yes.
mm-hmm.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, Earl, treasurer's report that everybody should have gotten.
Yeah, just a couple of comments before we start. I also saw the newspapers up on the top floor of the Historic Society's building. And if you haven't been in that building in the last year or so, they've done quite a bit of renovations. And they're going to, promote it as a community resource, community space. So it's really going to be nice. And the archivist was very excited to have the newspapers. And I think she's new to the Historical Society as well.
Yeah.
She is. And doesn't she have a great last name? Legacy? Isn't that great?
Oh, yeah, that's amazing.
That's perfect.
I didn't
Yeah.
catch that.
Did she
That's good.
change it to that? That's like,
No, I think that might have been her maiden name, but she's got a hyphenated name. So yeah,
wow.
great. Mhm.
The other comment, Kathleen mentioned the shed outside, and I just wanted to, I mentioned this to Kathleen, but put a plug in for Rick Picardi, because the day they were putting the shed in place, he was there preparing the foundation, which, if you've ever done a shed, that's as important as the shed. So kudos to Rick for getting that thing put into place, and it fits exactly. Couldn't fit better. All right, so I'm gonna go peek on my computer at the treasurer's report. So as you can see from the graph on the first page, the markets continue to smile on our endowment investments. So the trend is up. Let's hope it keeps going. The market's a funny place. As you can see from the next two pages that report on the balances at the end of each month since a year ago. And, a year ago was just about when COVID was and the market was taking a beating. So it makes our numbers look even better, because they were beaten down in April of 2020. And now they're up significantly. So it's done well for our investments. Let's just put it that way. The next couple pages, 3 pages are, four, are the checks that we've written since the town's fiscal year anyway, since July of 2020. And I think, as we explained last meeting, the checks with an R next to them in the right-hand column or towards the right-hand column means that the checks have been presented to the bank and published in a statement that they've given us. The ones marked C have not been reconciled on a statement from the bank, but have cleared the bank. And then the blank ones have not been presented. So interesting, the carpet company hasn't presented their check yet. I haven't checked in the last couple of days to see if they have, but anyway. The last page shows our expenses and transfers into the checking account. If you're wondering why the overall total is negative, this report doesn't account for the fact that there was $4,000 in the account, more than $4,000 in the account at the beginning. So we still have a positive balance on the checking account, as is shown on the previous page anyway. So one other page I did, I don't, I kind of wonder sometimes how we're doing, and I did this report probably for a couple of reasons. One, to see how the investments have done since the donors made their donations, and also to kind of use it as a benchmark or at least a milepost to see, where we're going forward. But what I tried to show is if somebody were to match the donation, for example, to the Charles Whitney Davis Fund, who originally gave us $10,000 in 1920. According to, and there's a number of sites on the web that'll translate money from previous years into what the equivalent is today. The equivalent of that money in 1920, $10,000 in 1920 is $129,000 today for an equivalent donation. So I did that with all the ones. So there's a couple dates in there that aren't, they're kind of averages because some of the donations weren't made all at once. As you can see from the Duchesne Fund, which has been given recently, that doesn't show as much as an increase, but only because it's the significant amount given in 2013 has only been in there for 7 years, or accounted for 7 years. So, you can look at that and look at our current balance and say, how have we been doing? But keep in mind that the money that was donated in the past was also meant to be spent. So just kind of a data point. I don't know if we can draw any other conclusions from it, but it was this kind of information that I looked at when we came up with the recommendation to spend 4% a year, because at least for the last 50 or so years, the stock market, which was where we've got a significant amount of money invested, has returned 8% a year. So, 4% is half of that. And that would allow the funds to grow like they have done, and also underwrite some of the expenses we have. So those are my thoughts based on that last page. So if anybody has any questions on the treasurer's report, don't hesitate to ask. You can ask now, or you can ask later.
I have to say thank you, Earl, because I feel like I understand so much more based on the research and the presentations you've been doing for us. I find it really helpful. Thank you.
Wait till my next one.
So CPI equivalent, that's adjusted for inflation? Is that
Yeah.
what that? Okay.
Yeah. The one that
Wow.
says
Look at all that money.
CPI equivalent. Yeah, you can look at it's interesting. If you look at, say, the average for a 10-year period, that's not necessarily the average since 1920. So these websites have actually gone back and calculated the increase based on each individual year's inflation amount, CPI amount. Kathleen, you had mentioned that some of the money from there was one fund, I forget which one it was, went back to the 1800s. I didn't go back that far. But
No, that's okay.
I wasn't sure, how much of the money came from that far back. But this, again, kind of, I think, underscores what we've been saying about our investments. Our investment window is Well, in the case of some of this money, well over 100 years, which means we can, look at investing these funds a little differently than somebody that might only have 20 years left to live. So it's really,
Yikes.
we can withstand a down market is, if we hold on to our hat, so to speak, because they'll come back. If the market doesn't come back, the United States is in trouble. We'll have bigger problems in our library finances.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you. That's helpful. You're great at this data sorting. Okay, where's my... Okay, committee reports. So it's just a report, and if it's under old business or new business, we'll get to it later. But the investment committee, is Mark here? Mark's not here. Can we vote to accept that, though, without him? The new investment policy that...
Yeah, I think I would like him to explain.
Yeah,
go
I
over
would
it
say
again.
so, yeah.
I don't think
Okay,
we're going to
so
make any major. Yeah,
we'll
I
come
don't,
back to that if we can.
Mhm.
yeah, I don't think it's going to make any major difference on what he does in the next month anyway.
No, I mean, it was
Yeah.
pretty much, he had sent us the updated one with the changes.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
but we'll wait and see if he gets on soon. He may be like stuck in traffic or something, trying to get home. Okay, long range planning, that's me. I don't have anything new. I'm still working on it. Building committee, Eva.
So the one update I have is, first, thank you to everyone for last month voting the not to exceed amount of $20,000 for the reading room tables and chairs. Kathleen and I went back and forth during the month just to make sure that I had the right format for an RFP, because I had my own and just wanted to make sure that we were compliant with the town. So now that I know what I'm working with, I'm crafting that RFP, which we will send out and get our pricing for our furniture. I don't recall if I told you last month that what I have learned from furniture vendors is that right now, supply of furniture, that window that had increased during COVID, is now shrinking again because people aren't really ordering furniture. Even though you've heard a lot about supply chain issues, it doesn't seem to be hitting those furniture supplies. So, which is a good thing for us, because we're shooting to have new furniture in for September or August if we can get it. So, okay. So that's the latest on that. Kathleen has given you all the other updates because she's really boots on the ground with all of this stuff. I'm aware of it, but she's the boots on the ground. So that's it. And you're on mute.
Thank you. So with going through the action item chart, there were only 2 new items added on from last meeting. Let's see. Mary, I guess if there's anything new. So Mary, any updates on the 501c3?
No, but we need to, I thought we were going to perhaps vote as to whether or not to retain counsel to advise us with respect to that.
And the price, I mean, you had brought the price to us last time.
Right.
And
So Brad Bedingfield, who works at Hemingway and Barnes, thought it would be a high price would be like 7,000 to 9,000.
okay. So that gives us a ballpark.
Mary, could you repeat the numbers? It was 7 to what? I'm sorry.
$7,000 to $9,000.
Okay, thank you.
Mary, if you want to make it, and it's up to the board, but if you want to make a motion to do
That would-
that, go ahead.
Be great, only so that I could reach out to him after this and, know.
Just one other thing I thought of. Stan had talked to Melissa about their thoughts on, the town's thoughts. I don't know
Right.
if you discussed that at all, Dee, with her about going forward with that. Melissa thought it sounded like a good idea, but she was going to talk to Lynn, I believe. So I don't know if we kind of want to wait to hear what happened with that. I don't know. What do you think, Kathleen?
When Ann and I met with Stan last Thursday to prepare the agenda, and at the time Stan mentioned that he was talking to Melissa Rodriguez, the town manager, about something else, and he just raised as a topic that the board was looking at becoming its own official entity, if you will, and moving the endowment funds to the libraries or to the board's own accounts. And so that's what the reference is that Ann's just made. So
Oh,
I'm
and
not-
I just found my notes. Yes, we thought we should wait until we get an understanding of the town's position to vote
Well,
on that. But
Stan and I had discussed, Brad always had felt it was appropriate to reach out to the town, that this should be a collaborative endeavor. And to the extent that the town, like right out of the gate, had reservations, he would be able to like answer it or answer, any questions that they might have, but that no work would be done until we had like a better feeling for what the response would be.
And I apologize, I have not been privy to those conversations with Lynn and Melissa, so I will circle back to her and figure out where we are at with that.
well, and I think that
You're on
question-
mute, hon.
Yeah. sorry about that. The question is about, moving the funds from the town's tax ID into the board's own tax ID. And I think hopefully it's a fairly straightforward conversation, Dee, because the funds have always been donated in the trustee's name. They just didn't have a place to hold them.
so
There are certainly some legal issues that the IRS might have, concerns about. I'm just not fluent in sort of that practice of law, so I think that was our goal, was to make sure that, everything is done appropriately so that we're not, trying to undo something which inadvertently got done. But I know that Brad's goal, in advance of doing anything, was to have a conversation with the town.
So I just want to make sure I have my question correct, is that the question is the town's support or opinion of moving the funds from the town's tax ID to the Board of Library Trustees if they formed a 501c3.
correct.
Thank you.
So Mary, is this an instance where it would be good that the attorney is now working for us so that he can be authorized to speak to the town, to speak to Lynn Savage, for instance, if there's any questions?
I think that's what is appropriate. Stan and I can ask the town a bunch of questions, but if the town was to say, well, what about this? It's not really within our expertise to answer.
I see.
Somebody, somebody like Brad could address questions. He could also say, we've seen this before, this is how it was done. I just figure it's, rather than having a conversation, just what might be, let's have a conversation about what is. What are going to be the pitfalls of an application for this? What are the town's concerns that we haven't maybe even.
Yeah. So it sounds like it would be good to go ahead and retain the attorney to help us.
Right. It's not like
Yeah.
he would
Right.
Be charging us $9,000, if we never went forward, it is just,
Right. It would
He
be
has
like
promised-
the initial, like the
um,
initial inquiries and whatnot. And then if we decided, yes, let's go forward, then
Sort of
It would-
it's a time and materials, Mary, right? The time he spends, it's not any kind of
right.
flat fee to,
And so I agree
Exactly.
having him involved from the beginning because we don't even know the correct things to ask.
right.
Don't forget, one of the big, one of the other reasons for moving the money from under the town's tax ID, if you want to call it that, but had to do with the fact of our investment, the way we're doing our investments don't necessarily agree with restrictions that the town accounts may have. So that was
yeah.
a good part of what we're trying to do, is to
Yeah.
keep everybody, on the right side of the fence, I guess I would say.
Yeah, not that we're doing anything wrong. It's just for those people who are listening, right? Not for the,
Well, no, I think we just want to clarify.
right. It's we're
going
doing the
forward.
right thing with what our funds are, but that might not be in line with what the town might, say to do with those kind of funds. So
So-
does Mary make a motion then?
So, right. So the motion, I guess, what would it look like? And what are you guys comfortable with? To reach out and to retain Brad as counsel for this particular purpose?
For,
Or
a
the
certain amount of money.
inquiries or the initial inquiries?
So motion to retain counsel with respect to advice on forming a 501c3.
Do we need to put a money amount on that?
And not to exceed $9,000?
Not to, then add that to it, not to exceed 5,000 or 9,000.
Okay, I'm going to ask again to make sure okay, so we had talked about reaching out and certain things, but is this really, we want to retain counsel
Right, motion to retain counsel
with respect to,
provide advice related to the formation of a 501c3 for the trustee.
okay, thank you.
And I think
Not
there
to
was-
exceed $9,000.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Thank
I'll second that motion.
you. All right, great.
Okay. Oh, am I muted? No. Okay, so we need to do a roll call and I vote in favor, Ann Kavanaugh. And Mary,
In favor?
Eva,
In favor?
and Stan. I mean, Earl, sorry.
Cut that out, Ann. This is Earl. I vote in favor.
Okay, then that passes 4-0.
By the way, I texted Mark, and he apologized, but he has a conflict and isn't going to be able to join us.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so that passes. That's good. We'll finally move forward on that. And I'm going to skip that. Okay, we're also going to postpone C, D, and E till the next meeting, unless Eva, you have something on the 375th.
No, nothing. The organizations I've been talking with, we really have not had either had meetings or had anything that was happening with regard to that. The Sustainability Committee had, unfortunately, you probably saw publicity about the townwide cleanup that was supposed to happen on Sunday, but because of the rain, there was none. It is being postponed, and they did sort of add to their publicity the fact that the town is 375 years old this year, let's make sure it looks nice. And, so at least I think that was raising the awareness. Plenty of people don't know about the anniversary this year. So as far as I know, the Women's Club, which we haven't been really having meetings, but we do have a committee that's been moving forward with the party that's going to happen this fall. So that's going to happen. And the Improvement Society does have some things that will be happening, I think, in the fall too. But other than that, I don't have anything else to report.
I was kind of
I
glad that was
apologize.
postponed.
I have to leave.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye Dee,
And I'll
thanks.
get
Bye,
question.
Dee.
Bye, Dee.
I have to say I was kind of relieved about that Becky's Pond getting postponed because I did the Patriots Park cleanup with the
Mhm.
those
Yeah.
scouts are great. Earl was there too.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry I wasn't. I was working all day, so I couldn't be there.
Oh,
But
we had a
I
good turnout. Boy, those
Yeah,
scouts are
that's-
great.
that's what I heard. Phyla
That's-
sent a nice message.
That's
Yeah.
all right. All the young ladies that are in Scouts
Yeah, Earl
DSA
clarified all that.
made
for
up
me.
for your absence.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, they probably had more energy than me.
They were moving fast. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, so hopefully we'll get a nicer Sunday. And Ann, I'm glad you're going to come to Becky's Pond because
Well, when is the new date though?
we don't know yet.
Okay.
But there's a lot to be done there. But I think we can make a really big impact. So
Yeah, I went there with the town's new
with Taylor,
Taylor. What
Yeah.
is he called? Like the
he's
conservation guy.
conservation. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he
But-
is.
Yeah.
I've been there too with him.
Okay, so moving on to new business. Kathleen's going to talk about the chimney roof repair / replacement.
Yeah, hopefully the pictures and things helped.
Yes.
We knew we had a few things to do in terms of the clay tiles, and we believed that we had enough clay tiles stored in the lower part of the building to take care of the repairs. Unfortunately, when people, not me, looked at the clay tiles, they saw a big pile of clay tiles, but they're the wrong size clay tiles. So while the roofing company was able to repair the main roof area that we needed done, and it was a small one, so that's good news. When they got on the sky lift and got up to the roof of the chimney, they're like, it's not going to happen. It really needs to be completely replaced. The tiles are a different size. They are, and this is consulting with Steve Foster, he's expecting that these are a custom size. They're not a standard stock item, that we would be looking to find someone to manufacture them for us. And there are a couple of things that come into that, one of which is finding someone and the cost that would be involved, but then also that turns into timing for us. So Steve, talking to the roofing company who was working for us, recommended another option, which was to change the tile to a copper roof. And there were a couple of design features that they talked about, having it be a standing seam versus a flat sheet of copper. My one observation was that if we changed one chimney, we better be prepared to change the other chimney so they still match. So at this stage, we do not have any prices on this. The town uses different companies under contract, and it turns out this happened right on the cusp of our current roofing contract expiring. So I'm waiting for the new roofing company to be under contract to the town, and then I could get pricing. But it seemed before going to get pricing, I should find out, are we interested in seeing the pricing on both options or just one option? And if just one option, which option? That's my question.
Can you refresh my memory? I can't recall if you told me what you and Steve were thinking, what your preference would be. Was there an advantage to the standing seam versus the seamless?
The standing seam apparently holds up much better. If it's a single sheet, they say that they didn't use the word warp, but they did say wave, that over time, that single sheet would change in appearance. Now, truthfully, those chimney roofs are pretty high up. I mean, I went out and used my camera to take pictures to give you a sense. So the pictures that I took from the park, I was standing in front of the monument. So that's how far apart, how far you have to be from the library to really get a good look at the chimneys and at their roof. And on the other side, I was standing at the intersection of Main and Green Street. The chimneys themselves are high. The roofs are a fairly small area. Steve felt that over time the copper would get a patina, which would match the other copper. So we have some copper downspouts in other places. That he thought that that was a better option as a long-term solution, as well as could probably be much more cost-effective than trying to find and get manufactured clay tiles. Part of me says that if we did go with the clay tile option for the one chimney, we would want to get enough that we had them on hand for when we would need to do something to the other chimney, because the clay tiles are really not an ideal solution for New England climate. So it's a question of how long, not a question of if it will. So Steve felt he was particularly supportive of the copper roof idea, but to make sure that we had a design that worked well with the building's appearance.
It does look like the standing seam option would go best with what we have today, you know, as a change, you know, making the change, but making the change not as noticeable.
Yeah, it almost looks, those almost look like seams in the picture.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
are the chimneys actually used?
Yes, their exhaust. So the chimneys are connected to the fireplaces and the rotunda, but they're also connected to our heating systems, which are gas. So they are in fact active chimneys.
Because I noticed that the one on top of the chimney, the seamless, I know it doesn't have to be seamless, but it looks like it has venting. The chimneys have venting already, those little squares.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you mean.
So on the chimney, see how there's like
screens.
little windows in them?
The screens, it's like a screen. Yeah.
So that's the venting, right? Like on the picture with the seamless flat panel, you know how it's like elevated and it has like screens under it?
Right. So that is actually considered a roof cap, and that's to keep the birds and everybody out of your chimney.
Right, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering, do they need to have that mesh
We-
screening, or are the little windows with screens on them enough on the chimneys?
Yeah, we would not need, that was just to show you the picture of what seamless looked like versus a flat sheet. So we do not need to put so on the picture on the first page that shows the flat panel, we do not need to add any additional mesh. In our chimneys, and you can't see it quite as well.
So it would be the same height then, and it would almost.
It will be an exact replacement to the location of the clay tiles. Our chimneys have built in 2 windows, and we did put new screening on them when we did the roof work a few years ago. So we're already protected in terms of keeping the creatures and the flying friends out of the chimneys.
I think the seamed copper would look very nice. Standing seam copper. I think that's the much better solution long term, and I think that it would probably be cheaper.
That was Steve's expectation, that it would be cheaper.
So should we vote on moving forward with one or the other, or?
Kathleen, just a quick question. The determination of the tiles that aren't available anymore, was that made by the current roofing contractor or separate from them?
That was Steve Foster's statement.
Oh, okay.
We can still go explore both options. The thing that I didn't want to do was to go explore both options if one of them was not a contender at all. There's nothing wrong at this stage to go and once I have the roofing contract in place for the town, to have them tell me exactly what it would take, but I wanted to know what I wanted to ask the roofing contractor before I met with him.
Presumably, they could source them from someplace in the south because these clay tiles are very popular in Florida and, you know, places like that.
Yep.
But do we even want to pursue that? You know, do we like this standing seam copper roof idea better because it's more appropriate for our climate?
Well, will it turn green?
Yeah, just the way that, as Kathleen.
Right,
said,
so
the
won't we like the
is-
look of that?
Well, we already have some copper on the roof, so it will just match what we have. I think you can see it in the photos that Kathleen sent.
Oh, like around the rotunda, like that's,
I'm just looking.
or is it in the front?
Again?
Where are
Yes,
you
around-
guys?
Yeah,
where are
around the
you-
rotunda.
Where are you guys
Um,
seeing these pictures, by the way?
Kathleen sent a memo dated April 23rd,
Okay, I'll go see if I can.
and it has
Oh,
photos.
sorry about that, Earl. We should have told you what we were looking at.
So Kathleen, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's easier when we're in the room to tell that we're flipping pages. It's a little harder on the screen. Go ahead, Eva.
So the Park View Zoom photo is the best one to really show the copper, right? Is that
Yes.
the best one? Yeah, because you see, and the black around
Oh, okay, that's turning,
Honda, that's the copper that's changing its patina. Yeah, so it would be, you would have the matching look on the top of each of the chimneys. Kathleen, I presume there will be an economy of scale by getting two instead of one. I mean, it won't necessarily be double the cost. There will be an economy to doing them both at the same time.
It definitely, because the biggest expense will be labor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Whatever the materials cost, you can pretty much guarantee that the highest part of the cost will be the labor. So we would want to address both chimney roofs at the same time if we're changing to the copper, for instance.
Yeah. And ideally, the labor, they'll do an excellent job. And that means they'll do an excellent job on both of them. Right? Versus having one level of expertise on one chimney at 1 year and then a different level on another year.
no, I think we absolutely should do both at the same time.
Yeah.
But I mean, do we want to look into the tiles? Like, would it match the color and everything? Like, do
That's
we
what
know
we-
who the manufacturer is of the tiles? And
Now, it would be the same kind of research project that we had to do. So when we did the flat roof a few years ago, around the edge of the roof is a parapet wall, and we needed to have, it has a special size tile that sits on top of that parapet wall, and we had to have those custom manufactured. So we would probably maybe start with that same company that we used before to find out if they're able to supply these tiles for us again. And as Eva said, there may be a supplier in the south, for instance. I think the question for me today is, do you want me to pursue both options and get costs on what they would be?
I don't know,
Everybody's
any
view.
other thoughts? I'm kind of leaning towards the copper, but
As am I. Kathleen, unless it would not be labor on, I mean, my thought is if the roofer can do that legwork for you at no cost to us, okay, it's good to know. But I don't know what Mary and Earl think, but I think the copper would be nice. And it helps to get us away from those tiles, you know? And I think that's the right direction for us to be moving in because we're in New England.
Yeah, I personally have no preference and would lean towards, the experts that have some building or roofing experience with tiles or copper. So, if we think the copper is going to be easier and significantly less, then I
I
would say
mean, the tiles
that's the
have
way to
been
go.
kind of problematic, they have to be
Yeah.
checked, they
Yeah.
fly off, they could,
Yeah.
I don't know if they could potentially damage the flat roof if they came
Oh,
off.
yeah. Absolutely. That was a
So they do
concern of
have their
ours.
drawbacks. And I
Yes.
think that the chimneys are different enough and
Mhm.
small enough where,
And invisible enough.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
again,
Kathleen, when you first mentioned the chimneys, I'm like, chimneys? We have chimneys? And then
Yeah.
I drove by and I looked at the pictures, I'm like, oh, right.
yeah, yeah. Mary,
So,
what do you think?
I'm in agreement with Earl. I think we should just rely on what the experts think. And I do think weather in New England is probably a driver for this decision.
Mhm.
okay, so do we need to vote on this?
I don't think so.
It's not really a,
Right, we don't have pricing yet.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I say go forward with checking out
pricing.
but does everyone agree the standing seam would be better?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And Kathleen, if the roofer can give you an idea of what those clay tiles would cost, it's probably a good data point for us.
Yes.
It may make it really easy for us to say, oh yeah, let's go with copper. Who knows?
I'd be happy to go to Italy to check them out for you.
Take a field trip.
Earl, I think it might just be to go to Florida, and we might have to send you in July or August. So that might not be so great.
Oh.
Actually, I might have to be going to Florida in July or August to finally be able to see my dad. So I could.
Oh.
Yeah.
We can send you with a shopping
I
list.
know. Yeah, I'll go.
Thank you
Wow.
very much. That's helpful. This was really just, to get an opinion at this stage, so I would know which way to proceed.
Mhm.
Okay. So on to the bathrooms.
Yes. So this has been an ongoing conversation for a while about our public bathrooms. We know they're dark. We know they needed to be.
Kathleen, I just wanted to make sure, Earl, do you have the document? There's a document for the bathroom, right,
Yep.
Kathleen?
Yes. Thank you,
And
Cindy.
I
Really
just wanted to make sure you have it, Earl.
I don't have it.
She's
It
taking
was
care
sent-
of you.
Okay, it was sent from Kathleen, so.
What day? Because I do not have the
I think
roof.
it was was it
in my
yesterday,
email.
Kathleen?
I sent it on Saturday morning.
Okay, I'll check. I'll look.
But anyways, okay, I'm sorry, Kathleen.
No, that's good. That's the part when we're in the room, it's easier to see, where we are. So we've been talking about what to do with the public bathrooms for a while. We have painted them a very dark color because that helped with the graffiti problems. We know that the metal walls between them really are tired and need to be replaced. The clay tile, it can be cleaned, but at some point, no matter how much you clean it, it still smells like a bathroom. And so we've talked about what to do with that. In part of the process, we've had things changing socially, societally, is that going to be a right word for us? Where there's a much greater interest in having single-use bathrooms and not to have multi-stall bathrooms. And this relates to, some of the new legislation about respecting gender identity and things like that. So we had been talking about this, and then along came COVID that said single-use bathrooms are really the better choice. And so Stan and I had talked about this a little bit. Stan had a working relationship with Tom Galvin, who is the architect in this paper. And he asked Tom if he would just give us sort of a first free opinion. Tom came in and met with me, and we did talk about, what I saw as desirable changes to the bathroom. And I said, I liked his ideas. I would like to have a presentation about what it would cost to actually work up his ideas. So this would come in a couple of stages. The first is a basic design and feasibility study, because one of the questions is, do we have enough square footage to change to a different design? Or are we trapped with just the square footage by the square footage? And part of that, of course, is checking what it would take to change where the toilets drain, for instance, because once you start talking about plumbing underneath the floor, you have other kinds of issues that might come into code and structure. The second stage would be to develop the actual construction document. So the first stage, and he's offered as a proposal that he could do that first design for us for $3,000. After we saw that design, if we are interested in the design and it's meeting all the building code requirements, which he believes that it would, because he's already done some preliminary looking at things like blueprints of drainage for me, that the second stage would be to actually prepare the documents for the construction bid, that we would go out and find somebody to renovate the bathrooms, really take out what's there and put in all new bathrooms. And the price on that was quoted at $15,000 for the really the final architectural drawings that go out for construction bidding. And then as a third service that's offered is that when you go out to bid, you need somebody to work with the bids coming back in and going through the procurement process. And so I thought it was helpful that he could split the work into stages, so we could pick to do stage one, and based on stage one, then we decide, do we want to do stage 2 or stage 3? What I will tell you is that once you start looking at the type of renovation we're talking about, I said to Tom, give me a ballpark number for what this kind of change might cost in terms of construction. And his first statement was, of course, you know, the biggest part of the expense is the labor, because for the town, we're using prevailing wages. And so he thought the project could go to $100,000. So for me, that immediately says that we invest in the preliminary work and that we would use these documents to apply for capital improvement funds in the coming year. So next October, for instance, would be when by October, we need to submit the capital improvement documents and put it forward that if we're helping start the process and then have the town support us in the construction stage. So the decision for us right now is, do we want to proceed at all? And if we do want to proceed, how much do we want to do? Do we want to have them do just stage 1, which is prepare the schematic, which is the $3,000 price? And then once we have that, decide whether we want to go any further. Or do we want to have them, go straight to phase 2 as well?
I think we should go to phase 1, see what we think, see get everyone on board, and then it's fairly easy for them to continue on from schematic design to construction to the CDs, as they call them, construction documents. So we can go incrementally in steps.
Is that design phase, is piece 1 enough material to apply for a grant? Would that give you enough narrative and
I think that it
backbone?
does. I think that it does, but the other beauty of this, because the capital improvement round is in October, we could do that first phase and we can take it forward to town accounting and say, is this enough for the process? And if it's not enough, we have time to do phase 2 or to add whatever it is. They may say, you don't need phase 2, but we need, XYZ, a different document in between.
We could get a project estimate. We could reach out and get an estimated construction cost or something like that, which could support our capital improvement request.
So hopefully,
could somebody like Steve give us an idea of what would be needed? Like how much would be needed? Like to what, how much detail?
well, the capital improvement application goes into the finance department. So that's where we would need the response, whether we had sufficient information. And in terms of an estimate, for the capital improvement applications, the estimate needs to come from a company. They need something in writing from a company.
Yeah.
Not say, if I said, oh, Kathleen says she thinks 100,000, Kathleen, you're not the one to do the estimating.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
But I think we could try to get an estimate, from a third party who could say, this is given, here's a snapshot today of what construction materials would cost based on this schematic design that was done. And that would be sufficient to go forward with requesting funding.
Yeah, but the schematic or whatever, would that be the 15,000?
No, that's the
That's
3,000.
the 3,000, that initial design. You go through that, and once we've approved of the design, then they do the construction documents, which show all the different elevations, show what the treatments are to the edges, all those things. The big roll of blueprints.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kathleen, I had one question, and I just don't want to forget to ask it, so I'd like to mention it to you. He talks about once the construction is underway, and when the contractor has questions, the GC has questions, and that the addenda that needs to be filed, which is also called an RFI, a request for information. I just wanted to make sure that all of those are covered under the $2,500 number, because RFIs could turn into a big thing. So I just wanted to, for us in the future, if we move forward, I just want to have that in our heads, that we're sure exactly what that covers.
Right. And the purchasing requirements, purchasing laws in Massachusetts have different levels of money. And there's one set for just purchasing things. There's a different set of rules and regulations for construction.
Yes.
And at a certain dollar amount, which I don't remember off the top of my head, you're actually required to have something called an owner representative, somebody who's looking at it. So those are the exact kinds of questions, either that we would want to make sure we knew the answer to those questions before we signed on to do, so like his phase 3, I think we'd have a lot of questions about that. And so I think the phase 3 part, that's where the money amount might change, but that also could be a year from now when it does change.
Yeah.
Because we won't be getting to that for quite some time.
Yeah. So I think the construction chapter is chapter 149, and my company, we function as the OPM, the owner's project manager on a lot of construction projects. So this type of thing. So I have colleagues I could talk to about it.
Yeah.
Because I don't do that kind of work.
Yeah. It's quite far in the future for us. And at this stage, if we're doing this incrementally, he's given us something to think about, but we don't have to make a decision about it right away.
Sure. Yeah. It was just a question. I wasn't sure about. So. Sometimes, and if it's small enough, Steve Foster would function as the OPM.
Yes.
So,
So are we looking, I know that we're working on our big spreadsheet of how to fund what, but would this funding, you think, come from state aid or endowment?
Well, I think it would be nice if the trustees paid for the phase 1 study, because it represents to the town that the trustees are engaged and supportive of things. I mean, I can pay for it with state aid, but I think it sends a different signal that the trustees are being supportive of this.
That's true.
So
Any other thoughts from you guys?
Well,
go ahead.
I agree with the fact that, the trustees will be looked at as, trying to advance this. But I'm also curious if the town, we don't necessarily own the building. Is the town has budget to do a capital improvement to the library. So that
But-
would be my only thought. I would say neither. Well, I don't know, you can use state aid if you want, but I would see if the town had something first.
But then we would have to go through the process, right, Kathleen? We would have to wait.
I'm not sure about, I want to make sure I understand Earl's question. So it is the question whether or not there would be money to actually redo the bathrooms later on.
Yeah, I'm saying, is there another alternative to pay for the bathrooms, not the study, not the initial plan, but to do with the actual construction of the bathrooms? Is that would the town bear that, or?
Yes,
That
we're
would
saying
be-
we would apply for the
Capital
capital
improvement.
improvement money for that.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's-
I'm okay with saying, let's the trustees go ahead and get this thing moving. I mean,
Yes.
it's something we should be
Yeah.
doing.
Right.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Kathleen, I have a separate question. You and I had talked a little bit about when we do the construction, we would have liked to do it during COVID just because there weren't patrons in the building using the toilets, the toilet rooms. So I was thinking about this because
yeah.
we do have limited access to alternative toilet rooms, which are in the back in the staff areas. Would it be possible to have porta potties outside for the patrons to use, or is that just a horrible thing?
We'll put them in the
A
shed.
solution, put in the shed. Poor Rick. No, we don't want to do that to
Well,
Rick.
I will tell you, I have seen some very elegant porta potties.
Yes, I
And
have too.
they are not green. They actually look like somebody's very nice RV, in fact.
Mhm.
Although we would certainly need to look at what are we required to provide, for instance. So
Yeah.
based on the amount of the length of the construction project. So let's say we actually get to go ahead and redo the bathrooms with this kind of a design. We would have to look at that, what do we have to provide? And that partly will be based on how long does the construction process take place.
Yeah.
And then we would look for those other kinds of alternatives based on what do we need to, and Steve Foster and I have both actually kind of looked at each other and said, and don't forget, while they're fixing them, what are you going to do instead? And I said, I know,
Yeah.
we know that's an open question, but we don't need to answer it right away because
I
we're
mean, but
still pretty far away from this.
outside, I mean, they'd have to lock, right?
But-
Because
Yeah.
you don't want
and-
just anybody walking
No.
by to use these.
Well, I mean,
Everyone at Patriots Park will come over and use them, like.
well, and I think we have to be, I think we have to be considering the season too, because you can't ask people to go outside
In the winter.
There's all kinds of snow. But I've certainly seen some really amazing porta potties in a trailer. I don't remember what event I went to, but they were really nice.
I
know,
went to a wedding where I had no idea such a thing existed, and I was at a wedding in the middle of a hayfield at the top of a mountain in New Hampshire, and we're all looking at each other like, what do we do now? Because the wedding was under a tent in the hayfield,
Don't
and they
drink anything.
directed us. So the good news
Wow.
is we have time to search for some great options.
Yeah, they can be really nice. So, yeah, and very clean, and spacious too. So,
And they do lock.
Well, I'm sure
Yeah.
that there must be options because,
yeah.
I'm so naive. I thought, oh yeah, we'll just get this done in a month, a couple weeks, and
You never know.
$10,000.
The wedding I went to had one of those. They had attendants that went in after everybody went in.
Oh,
I would not recommend an outside porta potty as an alternative. I can give you stories from co-ed scouts that will tell you.
oh,
don't.
no, don't do that. Yeah.
I wonder if
They
they could
have to
do
be
one at a
monitored.
time. They could do one bathroom at a time or something.
Well, I will remind us that we need to be done promptly at 6:30. So
okay.
if we want to make a decision about this today.
Okay, so does someone want to make a motion then?
I can make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that Kathleen move forward with asking Legrassi, Yanowitz, and File. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I call it LYF.
LYF. Asking LYF and specifically Tom Galvin, so that's just as an in parentheses, so I'm asking for us to approve a $3,000 schematic design phase fee for LYF to begin looking at the work for the renovation of the toilet areas. How's that? Is that okay?
Yes, and we can refer to his proposal and say that,
Mm-hmm. Per the proposal dated April 23rd.
Who is going to be financing it though?
The
Oh,
Is it
from
gonna-
the endowment.
from the endowment. Yeah, we would finance it from the endowment. Thanks, Mary.
So
I'll second that.
can I repeat, we may want to fine tune this, but the motion
Sorry.
essentially was that to give Kathleen permission to move forward with LYF and to approve the $3,000 schematic document created on April 23rd, paid from the endowment fund.
So it's the schematic design fee of $3,000.
Design, okay,
Yeah, it's a design fee.
sorry, phase.
And Mary seconded it?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so roll call, Ann Kavanaugh, yes. Eva,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Earl.
Yes.
Okay, so that passes. And I think that is it for new business. And our next meeting should be Tuesday, May 25th. And that will be good because it's before the town meeting, which is going to schedule for June 15th, I believe.
yes, town meeting will be June 15th. The plan is for it to be outside at the football field, basically the way it was done last year.
Okay. And, okay, so anybody have anything else? The long item spreadsheet we're still working on for funding and all of that. I think I already said that. So, motion to adjourn? Somebody?
So moved.
Okay.
Second?
Okay, I'm in favor. Anne, yes.
Eva, yes.
Mary, yes.
Earl, yes.
Okay, then we will adjourn at 6:17.